So, errors of visual sighting. The visual sighting in pistol shooting is much trickier than is commonly believed. The classic poster of correct-incorrect sighting is very useful for the first training. But unfortunately, it does not reflect real sighting errors. Beginners never focus the sighting eye completely on target. They focus eye somewhere between the pistol sights and target, trying to see all the sighting objects equally clear. But that's impossible. So, real picture of incorrect sighting should look like this. The pistol sight and the target are both unclear. The poster correct-incorrect should look like this. As it was mentioned before, eye focus and concentration are different things. And the position of the pistol in sighting area seems very important and attractive to young shooter. So, the first indicator of quality of visual sighting becomes the white space between the black circle of target and front sight. And the second indicator, the overall stability of the pistol during aiming. So, if the pistol was sufficiently stable during the aiming and gap between front sight and black target was as desired, the sighting will be qualified by young shooter as good. This tendency for quality control along with the incorrect focusing leads to errors. In the not correct picture, the front sight is higher than it should be, but it is not so easy to spot. It is much easier to control its horizontal position. Two gaps on the sides of front sight are better visible. So, the typical beginner's error and main cause of high hits at 12 o'clock is so-called high front sight. Also, attention should be paid to changes in target illumination. This is often in outdoor ranges. If the target is exposed to the direct sunlight, the gap between front sight and black target looks different than in cloudy weather. If the target line is insufficiently covered and the sunlight is oftenly interrupted by the clouds, this can lead to vertical scattering of the shots. However, not all shooters are equally sensitive to changes of illumination. Peripheral vision provides information about position of pistol on the rectangle of the target, in addition to position relative to the black target provided by central vision. If the shooter has good peripheral perception, changing light will not be a problem for him. To check this, turn the paper target over and ask shooter to shoot at the center of it without adjusting the sights. If this is easy for him, his peripheral perception is good. Visual sighting errors should not be confused with inaccurate sighting. This kind of errors mainly result in vertical spread of shots. If it's noticed, the recommended solution is shooting at white target in the beginning of training and dry fire at target at appropriate distance. Errors of gripping and fixing the wrist. The hand with the pistol is a complex and important part of the shooting position. Aiming, holding the gun, and triggering, it's all about the hand with the pistol. It should be noted at the outset, not fixing the wrist when shooting is a mistake. Learning to lock the wrist and not relax it when pulling the trigger is an essential skill that should be worked out from the very beginning of shooting practice. Well-fixed wrist will help to minimize the mechanical consequences of the confident and overconfident triggering. This also applies to slow shooting. Of course, there is no reason there to rush the trigger in air pistol, but the cost of inaccuracy is much higher comparing to the 25-meter events. So, the following errors are considered to be typical. Rough trigger pull with insufficiently fixed the wrist. It will cause deflection of shots to the left downwards. Gripping fingers are following the movement of triggering finger. It will cause deflection of shots to the right upwards, and with certain position of the hand on the grip to the left upwards, but it's rare. Relaxing the hand and wrist while triggering. It will cause deflection of shots to the left downwards, and in some cases to the right downwards, but it's rare. The thumb and base of index finger are involved in gripping. It will cause deflection of shots to the left upwards and to the right downwards. Errors of the shooting position. The shooting position is the most structurally complex element of shooting technique. It consists of many interacting joints, muscles, bones, and ligaments. The structural complexity of the position determines the complexity of the controlling this element. Conscious control of the entire position is impossible. Actually, it's always a combination of the acquired skills and conscious control. Correction of the shooting position orientation. Deflection of the sights to the right. Correction, turn the position counterclockwise. Deflection of the sights to the left. Turn the position clockwise. Correcting the position of the wrist joint. Deflection of the front sight to the left. It requires to change position of the wrist joint. And required correction, turn position counterclockwise. Vertical correction. Deflection of all sides downwards. Correction. General increase in muscle tension of the shooting position. Shooter on the position F. Or tilt the torso backward. Shooter on the position C. The second option is undesirable, but acceptable for small deviations. Triggering errors. Errors of trigger pulling can be divided in two categories. Errors which interfere with the aiming accuracy, and errors which interfere with concentration on other elements of the shooting technique. In order to avoid mechanical interferences, the following conditions should be met. The triggering finger should move parallel to the barrel of the pistol. The triggering finger movement should be smooth, slow, and not interfering with the fixing of the wrist. The triggering finger shouldn't touch any part of the gun or the grip except the trigger blade. You can read more regarding the triggering finger position in the article Sport Pistol Shooting. To prevent errors of the second category, disturbing of shooter's concentration, the triggering should be controlled in a way as to require minimum of shooter's attention. Mastering such a method is important to improve the shooter's performance. The triggering finger movement should be slow, but athletes should feel that the finger is moving. If the movement is too slow, the finger will get stuck, freezing. The following typical errors should be mentioned. Error: the index finger stops while pulling the trigger, moves freezing. Solution: first, when controlling the trigger, more attention should be paid to the muscles flexing the finger than to the tactile skin receptors on the trigger. The shooter should flex his finger rather than pull the trigger. Second solution: check if triggering finger is relaxed enough for the soft movement. Error: shooter cannot move triggering finger smoothly. Movement comes as a chain of short fragments. It is difficult for him to start pulling. Solution: first, check position of the trigger blade. Relaxed index finger should be just slightly touching it. Second, make sure that the triggering finger is relaxed enough for the soft movement. Third, to understand what a perfect triggering movement is, shooter can take a few dry shots with the eyes closed and then try to repeat the same feeling when shooting. Next error: shooter is pulling the trigger quickly and say that it is difficult for him to pull it slowly. Solution: first, check if the triggering finger is relaxed enough for the soft movement. Second, shooter should be advised to relax. Intervals between the shots should be increased. It should get longer for the pistol to enter the sighting area, and so on. I would like to talk about the group of shooting errors related to the shooter's negative reaction to an approaching shot. The errors of this group are called flinching, anticipating the shot, fear of the shot, countering the recoil, etc. They can manifest themselves in different ways, but they have one cause: the shooter's negative anticipation of approaching trigger point. They may be in the form of pistol movement right before firing, uneven recoil varying from shot to shot, or significant mismatch between call of shot and actual hit. The cause for these errors is that the shooter cannot withstand the psychological tension associated with the approaching trigger point. For some psychological reasons, the upcoming shots causes him anxiety. The degree of such anxiety may vary from a chilling tension that prevents his finger from pulling the trigger to a slight shadow of doubt that appears behind his eyes at the most crucial moment. All this happens unconsciously, and it's very difficult to fight manifestation of subconsciousness. Let me give you a simple example. A shooter complains that pistol goes down just before the shot is fired. First of all, we have to correct this shooter that it was not the gun goes down, but the hand with the gun. The same hand that a couple of seconds before confidently aiming at the target. To analyze what is happening and give good advice, let us recall the first advice on the pistol shooting technique. Usually, beginner is advised to concentrate on position of front sight and at the same time slowly and smoothly pull the trigger to get an expected shot. And he is not advised to choose specific moment or spot to shoot at. Obviously, if shooter follows this recommendation in good faith, the negative anticipation will not occur. It all depends on how faithfully shooter follows these recommendations. So, what makes the shooter to disregard this advice? Is it just disrespecting other people's experience? No. The athlete's motivation for sport achievements will not allow him to indifferently watch the pistol move when aiming. It is a paradox. Motivation without which it is impossible for an athlete to improve at a certain stage can inhibit his improvement. We can call it negative motivation. But let's go back to our imaginary shooters who complains that the pistol goes down. As already mentioned, in this particular case, there is a psychological cause, negative anticipation of the shot, and certain physical reaction, lowering of the gun at the last moment. In this situation, we can try to eliminate the cause of the error or to minimize the symptoms. I would like to try to do both, and my advice would be like that. Don't think about shot, control your hand and follow through. Don't think and follow through is psychological part, and control your hand is a technical attempt to minimize the error. Also, we can say that maybe his technique is not wrong. Just this shooter is trying to apply a shooting technique for which he is not ready yet. He does not have the skills to shoot the way he wants to shoot. And as always in such situations, the shooting technique needs to be simplified. The shooter has to remember how things developed and take a few steps back. These errors are possible for athletes at any level. If several years of shooting training has been successful, it does not guarantee that a negative anticipation of shot will never appear. With improving skills, a responsibility for result grows too, and what was easy at first may cause difficulties later. Of course, dealing with negative anticipation and high skills levels requires considerable efforts on the part of the athlete. Getting rid of errors caused by motivation requires even more motivation. Even if this error occurs sporadically, in a few shots in each series, efforts to get rid of it should be made in every shot without exception. This is not easy and does not always coincide with the athlete's ideas about his own improvement. But let's go back to the technical side of the problem. What to do if the following symptoms appear? The calls of shot do not match the actual hits significantly. The recoil of the pistol is uneven, as if the cartridges were loaded with different powder charges. Pre-shot movements occur, or recordings on the electronic simulator shows that the pre-shot oscillations are increasing. Scores do not improve with intense training. What to do? There are two ways to improve the situation. Psychological, to treat the root of the problem, and technical, to get the symptoms under control. These are psychological points that should be considered. Since with intense training, it is impossible for every shot to be unexpected, it is necessary to develop a different attitude to approaching trigger release. The shooter should neglect it, learn to take reasonable risks, never anticipate the shot, etc. The shooter tries to recall the development of his shooting technique, considering if there was anything that has been missed but seems important now. If so, go back to that point and try to repeat the mastery of those skills. Simplify the shooting technique. When you are trying to deal with the symptoms of negative anticipation, technical way, you need to remember that this means improving your control over the muscles of your shooting position, the muscles that are causing you trouble. But improving shooting position and developing skills to control it is a labor-intensive and time-consuming process. Trying to cope with negative anticipation in a technical way, the first thing to do is to eliminate or significantly reduce the cause of anxiety in training sessions. It means to reduce shooting at target and scoring. So dry fire and shooting without target should be greatly increased. It can be increased to several hours. It is also recommended to alternate shots with 1 or 2 dry shots when practicing. Follow through is a must. Since triggering movement is the essence of approaching the trigger release, the shooter needs to choose triggering style that doesn't require a lot of attention. Slow, smooth, but in the same time quite tangible. Before moving the pistol to target, the shooter should realize what actions he is going to perform and how to perform them. He should have a good understanding of technique from start to finish and leave no room for looking for favorable or fortunate conditions. Prolonged aiming at the target can provoke negative anticipation of the shot. The shooter may consider shortening the aiming time, but without changing the favorable style of triggering. If his favorable style is long, he should start pulling before the desired aiming pattern appears. Training on electronic simulator is a good way to improve shooter's technique, and it will be useful. However, it is important to strive to get a feel for all the aspects of shooting technique without electronic simulator. To conclude this lesson, I would like to say that your motivation is the key to solving any problems that may arise on the path of your shooting career. Be persistent and everything will work out.